Hi, everyone. Welcome to Levels. I am Jeremy Long, and I'm sometimes joined by my co-host, the Sports News. And there she is. She's back, ladies and gentlemen, like a magician, like David Blaine, or the other David, Copperfield.
Yeah, magician's name.
She's there. She's making the Statue of Liberty appear and disappear, things like that. CZ, how are you? You wrangling children these days?
Man, I said, listen, I started off this year, I was 5'11", and now when you see me, I must be 5 feet tall. They whittled me down and down and down, man.
Hey, man. Hey, that's the joy of children, I hear.
It's just whack, it's this virtual stuff. We together too much. That's what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. They're finding my hiding spots for bodies around here. Well, we have a really fun show. We took the last couple of weeks off, but now we're back. It's kind of that end of summer, get the kids in school and get them all situated and recharge, regroup. And now it's officially no longer summer. I mean, it's after Labor Day. Nobody's wearing white, so
But it's hot though.
But it's still hot in Vegas. It's always hot in Vegas. But we got a lot of fun topics to talk about. As always, you can drop a comment on any of our threads. You can join in on the show. We're going to talk about Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson. Your boy can't get right. Conor McGregor. We're going to talk about the rise of women in MMA. In 2011, Dana said they'd never have women in UFC, and now they're headlining events left and right. So we're going to chat about that, and plus we're going to take a little fun look at some videos in a segment that I'm calling Life Comes At You Fast. And then we're going to talk about this weekend's card, Colby Covington, Tyron Woodley. That's going to be a good hate-filled card, and so we're going to take a look at that. So let's start off with kind of the bigger story that's happening right now. Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson want to get it on, and it looked like for a while that was, and it probably is, the fight to make. But Dana and company, they don't like negotiating with their fighters, and so apparently Dustin asked for a little bit more money than Dana and company were willing to part with, and it led to some hurt feelings, and it also led to Tony Ferguson standing up for Dustin and saying, hey, pay the man. What's going on with this situation, CZ?
Well, Saturday night after UFC Vegas 10, Dana was asked about it, and he said there's lots of different ways to not fight, to get out of a fight, and Dustin does not want to fight. One of the ways you can get out of a fight is to be difficult in negotiations. So according to Dana, Dustin asking for whatever amount of money that he wants to have is him trying to get out of the fight. So then you see Tony Ferguson say, pay the man. I did join Tony Ferguson's live IG yesterday, and he said he's in camp. So he's training to fight somebody somewhere. Hopefully it's going to be Dustin.
I read somewhere Dustin Poirier actually left his family too and entered camp because he's prepared to fight as well. And, what do you think, number one, about Dana's comments about alluding to the fact that Dustin didn't want this fight, almost hinting that he was scared to take this fight and sabotage it just, but using money as the excuse.
Just calling him soft, man. It's disrespectful. It's straight up this guy has been a model citizen for UFC and for children with illnesses. Listen, he's raised a whole bunch of money. This ain't the guy that you call out like that. I mean, maybe Dana was low on blood sugar that night or something, because I just thought that it was, even though he's done this before, I just didn't see it coming for a guy like Dustin.
Yeah, he needs a Snickers because he ain't feeling right.
Snickers minis are out now.
Yeah, the Snickers minis are out. Yes. I picked up like 800 pieces of candy earlier today.
Yes.
Anyway, I mean this. It's so funny.
I'm gonna carry some Snickers with me on Saturday. I'm gonna show you. It'll be an inside joke.
I got Milky Ways and stuff here too. It shows you how fast you can be in and out of the president's graces in the UFC. Just a couple of weeks ago, Dustin Poirier was awarded, a citizen award, basically from the UFC, an outstanding citizen award, and named after Forrest Griffin and everything. And they give it to Dustin Poirier, the initial recipient. And then a couple of weeks later, Dustin is apparently afraid to fight or doesn't want to fight and is negotiating himself out of it. Now you're seeing some strong arming from the president. Which one is it with this guy?
Does it just mean that maybe you're never in good graces? If it takes just like asking for your worth to get your head kicked in for you to be called out like that, maybe you were never in good graces. And maybe everybody is pretty much in the same space when it comes to how the president feels about the fighters.
Now, Dana has gone on record several times saying he is not friends with his fighters, right. And people that mistake friendship and work with friendship. Well, that's on them. Even though whatever, Dana is Dana, man, when it comes to these things. But looking at Poirier versus Ferguson, we do have another interesting angle that Ariel Helwani brought up, which was in the back of our minds, and we kind of chatted about it. But the pending free agent signing of Michael Chandler, the long-time Bellator star and champion in his own right, and probably one of the bigger names you could have out there as a free agent to come along in some time, who is, a true Bellator homegrown star. His wars with Eddie Alvarez put him on the map. Going back, he's got some classic fights with the Pitbull brothers. Yeah. Some things like that, man. If Michael Chandler signs, I mean, people are curious. I mean, Michael Chandler isn't just some no-name coming over from some small organization. I mean, Michael Chandler carries a little bit of weight behind his name.
It's got to be the biggest signing that UFC has had from Bellator probably ever. Negotiations have started. I know Dana said it multiple times, and then on Saturday he confirmed that they've started talking to him. So expect he could make his UFC debut by the end of the year. They are going to make a short hop over to Abu Dhabi, and I don't know why they still haven't announced Fight Island. Fight Island is happening. That is where you're going to see Adesanya and Costa. It's very strange, but that's happening at the end of this month. They'll be there for a couple of weeks. They are going to finish the year in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I would imagine that's a marketing standpoint. They don't want to take the shine off of their upcoming events, because they do have some good upcoming events here, especially this weekend. You got a good one that's on free TV on ESPN with Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. Good little grudge match. Those fights are always better in UFC, or so I've been told. Our friend Sky Moore.
Hey, Sky.
What up, Sky Moore? Kind of, let me see here. Lost track of thought here.
Let's spank him. That's crazy.
Looking at it, Dustin Poirier, Tony Ferguson, or Tony Ferguson versus Michael Chandler, personally, which one would you rather see?
Oh, always Dustin and Tony. I want to see that fight because Tony looked old. He looked slow. Against Gaethje, so I want to see him come back sooner rather than later. Let's see what he's got left, and then we can make a real assessment on what what's next.
And I hate MMA math, but Poirier does own a victory over Gaethje, but he doesn't necessarily fight at the same speed that Justin Gaethje fights at.
But I mean, Michael, even though he's coming with a lot of experience and wins, does he get a top 10 guy right away, or does he get number 12?
Oh, no. You know what? Dana likes to do what Dana likes to do, and he likes to throw them in the deep end fast, because if they win, he makes money. If they lose, hey, their guys were never up to our standard anyway. We only have the best fighters in the world. But Michael Chandler is a former world champion, multiple time world champion. He's a tough guy. He's super aggressive, and he comes for the finish every single time, which also Dana White really likes. So, and he's been pumping it up on. If anyone out there has followed Contender Series, he's been pumping it up every single week to these fighters. They always say the same thing. Dana White's holding the contracts before the event start and saying, you know what, I'm looking for guys that are go out there and they're going to put their bleep on the line and they're going to look for finishes. So. That's apparently what he likes, right? That's what everyone likes. And
money-wise, so all of these fights are going to be anything with Tony Ferguson is going to be pay-per-view going forward. You put a name like Chandler in there, is that going to make you more money than Dustin?
Yeah, I guess it's that return on investment, because Michael Chandler's isn't going to be cheap either. From what I understand, he had a pretty good.
He's going to be less expensive than Dustin, though.
You think?
You're a new guy.
He had a pretty good contract with Bellator. That's why he didn't.
You're a new guy.
But it's still he has a little negotiating power. I wish I could see those numbers. I wish I actually knew those numbers. But I know last time Chandler had the free agent option was just a couple of years ago. He stuck with Bellator because they made him an offer he couldn't refuse, obviously. And apparently he was very happy with the money. So I don't see him leaving for less, especially when he's got a wife and kids and all that good stuff. So
yeah, unless he's getting some pay-per-view points. I mean, he's getting pandemic contracts right now, though.
Everybody is, bro. Everybody is. Speaking of pandemic, Conor McGregor, your guy, Mr. Can't Get Right, Can't Do Right, is back in the news once again. Over the last couple of days, it broke in France that he was arrested / detained and questioned in a situation. Now, people have thrown around the word sexual assault. Some have claimed it was indecent exposure, and so newspapers have kind of run with it. Conor, and of course, you have to say innocent until proven guilty. Okay, I know it's cancel culture and everyone's guilty of anything at any time. It doesn't matter if you did it 11 years ago or whatever. It's still that time. The question is Conor McGregor a victim of his own celebrity, or where there's smoke, there's fire? Is Conor McGregor really a sexual predator?
I don't know if he's a sexual predator or not. I need some more evidence. But my granddaddy used to say, if you keep getting in trouble from hanging out with the wrong crowd, you might be the wrong crowd. And other people are hanging out with you. So how many more times can there be? This is serious. I mean, this carries real jail time. It's not something you can pay your way out of unless the actual accuser just decides to not cooperate and completely drops her case. Although I don't know the law in France if you need the accuser to proceed or not. So we'll see. But I did ask Dana. Dana often says he doesn't talk about retired fighters, but this is Conor. And my question was more about, do you worry about guys who so-called retire and they have a little bit left in the tank? Wow. Is that like
some drag racers outside Thunder, man? They got something left in the tank too.
Yeah. I mean, because you see guys who could still be fighting, and when they leave the sport and they're still not done, they need a release for that. When you've been fighting your way into and out of things for most of your life, either you get paid for it or not, and you abruptly walk away when it really wasn't something that you planned, and you don't have anything additional to fall back on or to focus on, you're going to need to find a target for all of that at some point. And I worry about guys like that who retire with a little bit left in the tank. You often hear about them getting in trouble one way or another,
and who have millions upon millions of dollars at their disposal too. So let's take a look real quick at your question and answer with Dana White.
Conor McGregor is back in the news again. You know that he's retired, and you don't spend a lot of time talking about retired fighters, but this is Conor. How much do you worry about your fighters who retire kind of with a little bit more left in the gas tank?
What's the end of the question?
How much do you worry about your fighters who at least say on paper that they're retired, but they have a little bit more in the gas tank, meaning that they could come back and fight again, and perhaps they can get themselves into circumstances where they can get into a whole bunch of trouble?
Listen, whether you're retired or not retired, you can get yourself into trouble. I don't know enough about the Conor situation. I don't know about it. I know what you've read. I've read the same things. Conor is retired. I haven't talked to him. I'm sure he doesn't need my help or advice, but if he did, he can call. I don't really know how to answer that question. Listen, Cejudo's got a lot in the gas tank too. He could definitely fight again. But I think when you have a guy like Conor and Cejudo that have done it for a long time and cut weight, dieting, all the bullshit you go through, and then you make a lot of money, just don't feel like doing it anymore. A lot of people don't think Conor's really done. He's just whatever. I don't know the answer to that question either.
There you go.
Yeah, no.
And it sounds like a vague non-answer, but really, honestly, I have no doubt that maybe he knows a little bit more or whatever. Maybe he's reached out. Maybe his team has reached out just to kind of gauge what's going on, just like he does when John Jones runs into trouble and things. But, to kind of just weigh in on your thoughts on it, you do often find superstar. It's with any sport, any high-level athletes that are coming out, NFL, NBA, those first few years that they're out of the league or whatever, and they have time and money, because you got to have to understand, even fighters, they are used to a certain structure, right? I get up, I go to the gym, I do this, I have jiu-jitsu class, I have striking class, I have and then at the end of the day, I eat, I go to sleep. That's my routine. Now, all of a sudden, you take that after years and years of doing this, and you say, okay, now you have some money banked away, but you're still a high-level athlete. And in your mind, you're still, the adrenaline still pumps and everything else the same way. And you go out there and you're like, okay, I have nothing to focus that energy on. I'm not necessarily in jiu-jitsu class. Yes, I know lifelong martial artists are always going to be lifelong martial artists.
Yeah.
But there's no fight leading up to it.
Right.
There's no payoff at that end. So it would be interesting to talk to maybe someone like maybe we circle back around to like Dewey Cooper or some of these high-level coaches and ask them, what do you tell guys that are done with that part of their life? How do they transition? What is the best transition for them? That's a very interesting take. I've always said I was a fan of Conor McGregor. I think what he brings to the sport is something. He brings a lot of eyeballs, a lot of attention, and he raised the bar as far as pay and things like that for fighters. This other stuff is very, very scary that it keeps happening at this level and at this clip. It's the same with John Jones. It's scary that even in this structure that he's in, he's still finding ways to find trouble, and trouble just, always seems to be circling.
Every year there's a major Conor issue. So he throws a stanchion at the window of a bus.
Yeah.
Next year he cold clocks, a centenarian. And this year, I mean, and then we had the phone incident. He, stomped out somebody's phone. And now we've got Dana mentioned something about how he was out one night and he was meeting up with Conor, and Conor had a ton of security. And I've seen this with Floyd. You get, 50 people around, they all have some kind of job to
Right.
basically run security for you.
Mhm.
And Conor, similarly, has this kind of security, and Dana was like, nobody needs that kind of security. But then as the night went on, he actually saw what he had to go through, and then put into the fact that you're a fighter. Everybody think they could go.
Right.
You are a fighter, you want some of this. So somebody wants to get a rep off of that. So you throw those fools into the mix as well. Conor is like, $170,
he walks around like that, but he, and a guy like Conor invokes strong feelings in people. They either love Conor McGregor and I want a picture and I want an autograph and hey buddy, let me tell you about everything and I'm your biggest fan, hold my Irish flag and all this other stuff, or they hate Conor McGregor,
or
F you, you lost to Nate, you're McTapper, blah blah blah, and it's that. And Conor McGregor's like you said, he's a fighter, and he gets a little bit of proper 12 in him, and he could go. He swings at old men on a bench. He ain't gonna think twice about smacking me if I get out of line.
So he wants to go.
So we'll see how that all develops in the future. So our guy Jamel Herring signs with MTK Global. Now MTK Global is the kind of the marketing promotions brand behind. You see the rise in popularity and everywhereness of Tyson Fury. And a lot of boxers, they put on fights and everything, but they're not really known for their promotions necessarily, but their marketing of these fighters. And so your guy, right after his fight, which many people called lackluster, Jamel's last fight a couple of weeks ago, he actually was saying he was thinking about hanging it up. Do you see this as him preparing for the next stage, or is it I have a few more fights left, let me raise the popularity, raise the game?
Yeah, I think that he is preparing for the next stage, and the negotiations obviously began before the last fight, so it's something that he'd been working on, and I think that he's just like any fighter, wants to go on his own terms. So Jamel's going to defend that title at least one more time, we know. And then we'll see what happens after that. I know his wife wants him to be done after this next fight.
He shared that text. From his wife. She was like, I can't do this no more.
She's like, I mean, they got a child with special needs. It's like, look, I got you back from combat.
Right.
And now this, like, you got, he actually had a skull injury from a previous fight, which was, hey, did she get that blanket thing?
If you hear some banging, it's my wife's putting together some IKEA furniture.
She's winning. That's her win.
She's winning. That damn thing will be broken.
He wanted, he wants to go on his own terms. But listen, Jamel is an older champion as well.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine he's going to want to be fighting, another 5 or 6 fights for what?
How old is Jamel? 35?
Yeah.
36? Is he around there?
Around there, mid-30s.
He's been on the show a few times. He's a friend of the show, and so we hope whenever he's doing press again, we'll have him back on, kind of talk to him in detail about it. But staying in the boxing world.
But I want to just say real quick that
before we get to that,
I had a real problem with Timothy Bradley saying that Jamel Herring quit. I think Herring, out of all the champions, has earned the right to have a little bit of respect on his name. And for Timothy Bradley, of all people, Mr. I lead with my head and I headbutt MF when I feel like it in the ring, is going to downplay someone headbutting. It was a dirty fight. It was. I mean, it was mostly legal, but it was dirty boxing. But to call him out and to question his heart and say that he quit like that, it was extra crispy foul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're paying attention more and more to commentators during these events with not a whole lot of crowds in them. with no crowds in them, in fact. So you're hearing more and more. Usually I tune stuff like that, but sometimes someone needs to get in their ears and say, hey, look, less is more. Less is more. Speaking of less is more, Canelo versus the world. It's, you know what? It is Mexican Independence Day, so it's only fitting that this should be the day Canelo is fighting. But he is fighting. He's fighting with DAZN and Golden Boy as I open a Milky Way. Quick question, the trivia question before we start. Today is recognized as Mexican Independence Day, but do you know when they actually signed their independence?
I do not. Is it November?
September 27th, 1821. It took them 11 years and 11 days. There you go. I don't know why I know that, but I know that.
Paperwork can take a while.
Processing the paperwork. No.
Paperwork can take a while, but who would have thought that Canelo's next fight was going to be against Oscar, but in the courtroom? I mean,
well, he does not like Oscar. I'll tell you that much.
They don't. And can you imagine, like, for real, like what it's like when the two of them are like, because Canelo is another one who will put pause on you, and I can imagine that it's come close a couple of times, and I would love to hear some of those stories. But he's been paid a lot of money by DAZN, and there was actually something else that came back out 3-4 days ago that actually the first half of the case is basically going to be tossed out, so Canelo has to regroup with his attorneys. A federal judge in California dismissed the case and gave Canelo and his team until September 28th to properly refile. Something in the casework was not filed properly or something like that. So it hasn't been dismissed with prejudice or a ruling. It's just he needs to refile it and get his stuff in line. But the two big things coming out of it is that, number one, Canelo was really, really pissed that allegedly without his knowledge, final approval of his opponents switched from him and his team and partly Oscar De La Hoya and Golden Boy to DAZN. And he was really pissed about that because, he didn't know, allegedly, didn't know that was the case. So when when Canelo a few weeks ago announced that his next opponent was going to be some mechanic, off the street, and they were going to owe him $35 million for a pay-per-view that they knew no one was going to buy to watch Canelo beat up this bum. Excuse my terms. I don't like saying bum in boxing, but this no-name guy. Then all of a sudden, all this stuff started with the back and forth. The other big thing is that allegedly Oscar De La Hoya personally guaranteed to be on the financial hook for the remainder of that contract, and that's about $280 million. Now, I'm going to guess that Oscar De La Hoya doesn't want to pay $280 million. I have no idea if Oscar De La Hoya has $280 million to pay Canelo. So those are the two big things coming out of this, plus a list of other grievances and everything else. But this is a mess. Yeah, it's a big mess. I think that, we heard Fielding's name come out, and then, of course, it was Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe was also quoted as saying that, contract was agreed upon, and then all this came up. So he's had multiple opponents say contracts were agreed upon. So that lets you know there was something that was rotten in the cotton to begin with. But, $360-something million. He's getting paid $35 million per fight.
Mm-hmm. I think he got a lowered fee for, I think, the Fielding fight. I think it was like $15 million or something like that. So it's,
and I think they offered him 18 for Saunders. And Saunders was saying you would think that's enough money, but apparently it is not. It's enough, but you're supposed to pay me 35.
Exactly. Hey, if you are dumb enough to sign a contract with a guy, and I say that, okay, a huge win for Canelo. But if you sign that kind of contract, and remember at that same time, and a little bit before that, when Zuffa was thinking about getting into, when UFC was thinking about getting into
Mhm.
boxing, they had Zuffa Boxing. They printed up shirts, and Dana White was having, it was eyeing that. And they
I
were floating
saw the
around.
facility. We saw. He
Yeah,
took us in a tour
yeah.
of where it was supposed to be at Apex.
Oh, and they were floating around a crazy number for Anthony Joshua. They wanted to give him $500 million to become their guy, and give him like $50 million for 10 fights. Insane.
For
But
boxing.
that
Boxing.
company, I don't think the disconnect would have been there. If they would have done it, they would have honored it or whatever. DAZN, largely based on subscriptions and largely based on these fights that they hold with the names like Canelo and stuff like, Bellator ain't drawing nobody to DAZN, okay? Ain't nobody signing up for DAZN to watch Bellator. All right, you have your boxers, and this year you ain't got no boxing.
Think about DAZN. They went all in on boxing and baseball.
Yeah.
Baseball.
They saw an opening. They saw an opening because of HBO bowing out of boxing and saying, "Hey, we're not going to do it anymore." There's no more money in it or whatever. They had a new head of programming and they went a different direction. Yeah. So DAZN saw it, and they got the president of the former president, I think, ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
And he went in there and he said, "Hey, I know what ESPN's doing. They're about to sign this deal with PBC, and we're about to have boxing there. I think we could do it, but we need to lock in the biggest star that there is at this time, arguably one of the bigger stars, and you have Canelo." And then all of a sudden, all this mess happened. So it's a mess. There
was no marketing plan behind it either. It was just like, it's like, hey, we got Canelo. Come on and pay. Look, the Charlo brothers are asking $74. Well, they ain't asking, but PBC's asking $74 for that pay-per-view. Dude, that's a surefire way to say, don't watch this fight.
Yeah, and even though it's basically an entire day of fights. It's morning and noon. It's two different cards. But who's gonna pay that and sit around all day and watch? You're hardcore people. I mean, you're gonna find a few hardcore fans that are gonna.
I'm a watch, but I don't know if I'm pay that $74.
Yeah, I think. I think I'll catch the highlights on Twitter. I mean, quite honestly.
Oh no, I'm gonna see the whole thing. I just ain't paying.
Yeah, that freemium. Yeah, that freemium deal that you're on.
But most people are doing this now. Like, we got to figure out a way to add value, and the FU to boxing fans is not working anymore.
Yeah, we broke. Boxing fans, we broke. We're just like the fighters that are coming up. We broke.
But I wouldn't mind paying $74 if it was Deontay and Tyson Fury. But who has 12 hours to sit around watching boxing on a Saturday? By the way, every sport is back right now. Every sport.
Yeah. I did a live stream just the other night, and I had UFC, and I had
killed it.
The Golden Knights, and I had Lakers Rockets. Sports is back, and this whole divvying up, people are breaking away from cable. That doesn't mean if you're spending $300 on cable and you cut the cord because you don't want to pay $300 anymore, that doesn't mean I'm going to subscribe to 20 different apps and end up paying $300 again. It means I'm not going to do it. Right, and I am probably like most sports fans. I'm going to pick and choose, man. I got Netflix, but can I afford Netflix, Hulu, Disney, ESPN, every streaming service out there, CBS and TNT? Why? I'll catch the highlights.
Canelo's got a real problem, though, because he is in his formative years. Mm-hmm. This is when he should be fighting. And we don't want him to be on the shelf for too long fighting this legal mess. I hope we see him in December. If not, man, it's going to be real problematic for him. Whenever he's ready to fight, there's going to be 15, 20 people lined up to sign the contract to fight him. But he will have been out of the ring for, when did we see him last? Was it against Danny Jacobs? No, it was Kovalev.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, he was making work of Kovalev.
I thought I had the credentials right here. Hold on.
Oh, look at you. You're a credential saver.
No, yes. I forget where I've been when I go into the kitchen. So I need to have some kind of breadcrumbs to figure out where I've been. I think I got. Oh, wait, here it is. No, this is Jacobs.
Okay.
But anyhow,
Anyway.
yeah. Anyways, it's a problem.
It's
Yeah,
a problem.
it's a problem.
Your boy Daniel Cormier claims that he had a positive COVID-19 test before his heavyweight fight with Stipe. Just a few weeks before the fight, he had a positive test. His unnamed training partner, had a positive test as well. And then all this mess. What do you think about this revelation from Daniel Cormier?
This is insane. And if you read the story, so the story that the person who broke it was Kevin Iole over at Yahoo Sports,
yeah.
and it was tied into this new technology, this ring that UFC is now going to be in partnership. And that's probably what happened, was that Dana let him know about this ring and then hooked up the story with Cormier. And so Cormier is wearing this ring and it's showing like his readiness to fight kept going down, down, down. And then, let me just go ahead and get checked out again. And lo and behold, he has this positive COVID test. What happened now? So I'm doing the math on this, and I'm pretty good at math. 1 + 1 is 2. He tested negative. And then 2 days later, I believe he said, started feeling bad. Really? You tested negative and then you started feeling so you're saying now that the test that they gave you is faulty because everybody you were around also tested negative, unless it was your wife, and that's a whole different thing. But he didn't say nothing about her being sick. But I mean, think about that. They hid a positive COVID test to save this main event. They absolutely did. Even Dana saying, I was pretty certain that he was going to be okay.
Yeah. The funny thing is that we sound surprised at this. I'm laughing over here because it's these rings that they're peddling now. The rings that this ring company, I think they're called Quora or Aura or something like that.
I'm gonna get one.
It's just they've packaged the story with one of their official partners, and now Daniel Cormier, who is a company guy through and through for the UFC, God bless him, he is now saying, thanks to this ring, I went and checked the statistics, and by God, I went and got another COVID test, and that test just happened to be positive. Thanks to this ring. If I didn't have this ring, I probably would have just, and these are his direct words here, I probably would have just muscled through and, ended up worse for wear or gotten more people sick or anything else. And it just so happens that this ring is an official partner of the UFC. And now they've packaged this nice little PR story around it. It's hilarious to me.
It stank. It just stinks, the whole thing. You've seen the ads. If you open up a magazine and it's like an advertorial, right? That's what it felt like. Felt like they paid for a spread in the magazine, and that's what happened because they've canceled fights. Actually, Glover Teixeira, this is the third time.
Yeah.
This fight has been canceled. Like, he's done. Like, they're not going to book him no more this year.
Yeah.
So that fight was doomed. So that fight was canceled. You were talking weeks out.
Yeah.
It was.
Absolutely.
So they're supposed to fight. Was it October 3rd, the first Saturday in October?
Yeah.
They're supposed to fight. So we're several weeks out, and that fight is canceled. Similarly, Daniel Cormier tests positive for COVID-19. That fight's not canceled.
Hey, man.
But
we're this sport, man. And this company is it's something else, man. It is something else.
That's so wild. But why would you think that they would put like DC in jeopardy like that? Even if you say he's going to be okay, like we saw Jamel Herring, right? Mm-hmm. 2 COVID tests positive back to back, and he had some trouble in camp. Trainers were trying to slow him down after the first test, let alone the second one. And then, he looked like he was sluggish. He was coming off of something in that fight that we saw. So DC very well could be suffering some effects. Like, anybody, you ever had a bad flu and it just take you a little bit for it to get off of you? We don't know what this thing is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, if it was true, and then you go in there and there's just so many. You could have spread it to other fighters and other people or whatever, and it's not trying to be like overly sensitive to that subject. It's just it's weird how this company works, man. And it just the packaging with one of their sponsors. I'm surprised they didn't throw like, hey, also, by the way, if you drink Bud Light, you can. And my recovery is thanks to Budweiser. It's just something else, man. Speaking of something else, so this is a segment where we're going to transition into where we just take fun videos that we find around the internet and we show them to you. Sometimes they're going to be fights, but not every single time. In the case of the 2 videos I'm going to show tonight, just to inject a little fun into your day because it's Wednesday and it's hump day, no matter where you are. And those days always seem to suck a little bit more. So we're gonna try to make it suck a little bit less. This is called Life Comes at You Fast. Fun little intro. Okay, the first video is one that's actually been around for a minute, but it involves your favorite, a alligator, and an old man trying to wrangle an alligator that is not. He doesn't seem quite up for the task.
I wonder how this goes.
Okay, let's check this out.
Nah, I have confidence in you, buddy. Hey, Jody, you want to remove your badge and your other stuff?
What's that? Oh, well, get ready to put the tape on him now. Not really. All right. God dang it. Leave him alone. Back away from him. Leave him alone.
My point is, it makes me laugh so much because at the end, the guy is pissed that the alligator reacted this way.
Like, go ahead, run up on the alligator again. I mean, he really looked like he wanted to kick the alligator in the head, for biting out.
Yeah, I know. Like, he was upset that the alligator turned around and did what alligators do. But did you hear the and when he was asking, he was like, "Are you ready?" And he's like, "Not really, but I'm going to do this anyway." In my Hagar khakis. And
you're gonna throw a good suit jacket over
you throw a suit jacket over an alligator. So just take a look at this ending one more time here.
Oh.
God dang it. Leave him alone. Back away from him. Leave him alone.
And then the crowd around him was like, "Oh, hey, leave him alone."
Here's the thing. Like, there was nobody around him with any good sense. You didn't hear anybody saying, "Nah, Bob, don't do this, Bob. Bob, leave." No, everybody's like trying to get in on it. Like, all right, we're going to grab him by the tail. You get him by the head, and then we're going to run. What? And what were they going to do?
That was not a good plan, Bob. That was not a good. And you could hear other voices. You didn't see him on tape, but you could hear other voices. Obviously, there's people watching this.
Yeah.
Who just came? I mean, he looked like he just came out of.
There's a cameraman. Somebody was filming it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they just came out of church and saw an alligator, and he said, "You know what? I feel blessed today. I'm living and breathing, and thank you, Jesus, for this day. And I'm gonna go tackle this alligator. And oh my God, why is the alligator attacking me?"
Room for the alligator.
Yeah, at that point, natural selection. I'm all about it. All right, so this next one here, got just a couple of F-bombs in it. So sorry about your kids and everything. I'm just letting you know ahead of time. But it's a Little League football, and it's one of these that's been voiced over. So it's a fun little thing here.
And here is the snap. It is an end around a little Johnny. Room on the right side. Cuts it up the field. Flag is down, and so is fucking Johnny. Johnny is down. We don't know what they're putting in the water. over there in Albuquerque. With that, he just got jacked the fuck up.
Yep. What are little kids like that age doing in pads anyway? Like that is just very perplexing.
Bro, their helmets are this big and their pads are out here and their bodies are just little stick figures. One more time for the people watching in the back.
And here is the snap. It is an end around to little Johnny. Room on the right side. Cuts it up the field. Flag is down, and so is fucking Johnny. Johnny is down. We don't know what they're putting in the water over there in Albuquerque. With that, he just got jacked the fuck up.
Dang.
What are they putting in the water in Albuquerque?
Ooh,
we don't know. We don't know.
New Mexico don't play them games.
That is life comes at you fast, and we do it because we like to laugh, man. Okay, so
little kids being concussed.
So speaking of little kids getting concussed, no, I'm just kidding. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about number one. You got some FaceTime with Michelle Watterson. I say FaceTime with Michelle Watterson. You also had a story for LVSportsBiz.com highlighting the rise of women in UFC. Take it away.
Yeah,
talking to them children. Speaking of the rise of women, she about to rise something.
Somebody was about to lose their minds. I heard it. I had to step in and call an audible on that before it got wild around here. So in 2011, Dana White went on record with TMZ Sports and said that he would never give a contract to a woman fighter for UFC. And here we are, just less than 10 years later. Not only are women in UFC, they're headlining multiple times, for the promotion. And I asked Michelle, what did she think about that?
Yeah, I did not have that queued up. Oh, here we go again.
Sandra Cusino with Las Vegas Sports Biz.
Hi there, Michelle.
How are you?
Good to see your face today. First question for me is, you were part of some of the early cards in Jacksonville in the smaller cage. Did you learn anything in that fight that actually you deemed to be helpful going into Apex?
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of being comfortable with the idea that there isn't a crowd, being comfortable with the idea that I could hear my corner and she could hear my corner. Understanding that I had to draw energy from different places other than the crowd. All those small little things, play a factor, and definitely we were able to kind of fine tune how we trained in order to prepare ourselves for that.
Second question is, in addition to some adjustments you've had to make in your career due to the pandemic, you're also a mom of a young daughter. I know a lot of schools are doing things a little differently. Can you talk me through some of the challenges that you face having a daughter while you're also trying to figure out this kind of new era in your career?
There's so many things that happen in my fight career that I learned that I can then transfer over into life lessons for myself and for my family and for my daughter. Something that really stuck out to me is how courageous and brave the UFC was in stepping outside of the comfort zone of the pandemic and moving forward and pressing forward and figuring out a way to give us all work and allow us all to continue to pursue our passions during this pandemic. It really inspired me to instill that within my daughter. Okay, this has happened. This is out of our control. So now what can we do to grow from this versus allow it to make us submit to it? There are always going to be problems in this world, and you have to figure out as an individual, how are you going to deal with this problem and how are you going to overcome this problem? And so, with the pandemic and my daughter, getting over the hump of homeschooling and having her understand to be more self-sufficient and having her be more outspoken when she's having trouble, to her teacher over Zoom and to her parents, having her understand how to still socialize and connect with people over Zoom and while she's wearing a face mask, and keeping her healthy and keeping her active. These are all things, and keeping her and teaching her the importance of nutrition and the importance of hygiene. These are all things that are going to help her in her future, regardless of what else is there to come.
And finally, for me, I guess going back to 2011, Dana was adamant that there weren't going to be women fighting in the UFC. And here you are on short notice headlining a card. How does that feel for you? And do you think about those days when you thought maybe the door was closed? And do you embrace now how many opportunities you have in this promotion?
It is the coolest thing in the world. I remember being in my apartment, moving out to Albuquerque, New Mexico, still being a local fighter and having a vision board in my apartment. And at that time, Dana didn't think that he'd ever see girls in there. And I still had it on my vision board that I was going to be fighting for the UFC. And here I am, fighting for the main event, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Got choked up there.
Yeah, she got a little choked up there at the end, man, because, and interesting statistics. Like you said, you mentioned in 2011, Dana says this, and then he sees, of course, at the time, Strikeforce was around. You remember Gina Carano and Cyborg was still, doing their thing, and they highlighted some fights with Strikeforce, and then, along comes Ronda Rousey. And it happened in quick time, because by 2013, The Ultimate Fighter, their reality show where they find fighters, put them in a house and all that stuff, you featured women in 2013. So you're talking 2 years later. And then, of course, Ronda's doing her thing, and she doesn't have to go through it. And then a couple of years later, Carla Esparza wins season 20 after, I think, Pena, won season 18. And that's how those ladies got their contracts and everything. Up until the point of UFC 193, which was the first pay-per-view headlined by two female fights, Ronda Rousey and, of course, Holly Holm in that famous fight, and Joanna Champion and Valerie Letourneau, and in front of 56,000 plus fans in Australia. So in rapid succession, you saw, Dana, for what it's worth, Dana now in interviews has gone back and said, "Hey, I was wrong. Yeah. I was wrong." But his reasoning behind it, and he gave a couple interviews where he said the same thing. His reasoning behind it was, at the time, if you think, the MMA landscape in 2011, right? So MMA is not even legal in all 50 states for men, much less, for the ladies to get in there and do it. And still some senators now, are out there saying it's barbaric and it's human cockfighting and it's all these different things. And, we shouldn't be doing it and we shouldn't allow it. And to just see how much it's grown, propelled forward by people like Ronda Rousey and, Chris Cyborg and folks like that. And now you have Amanda Nunes.
Invicta was a big part of him.
Invicta was a huge
things
part
along, because they were really cultivating the talent that UFC was able to poach.
Yeah, and poach they did. Who's their president there? Shannon. I can't remember. I used to know it. But the president of Invicta, she did an incredible job. So many female fight, and it's still around, and they still do their thing.
Michelle Watterson,
Michelle Watterson came through. Amanda Nunes came through there. So many ladies came through that system to get. And you have to understand, if a sport's not legal, there's not too many sports or too many fighters that are jumping into a sport that you can't make any money off of. You can't even fight in a cage on. And so all of a sudden they start it became like a developmental league. for ladies lady
And it
fighters.
was necessary. I mean, it really was to have a developmental league pretty much because you'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
You know, there was judo and there was kickboxing and there was boxing, but the mixed martial artists were not being cultivated anywhere for women but Invicta.
Yeah. Yeah. And so where can they check out your story? Is it up now?
Yeah, it's up, lvsportsbiz.com.
There you go. lvsportsbiz.com. The rise of women in the UFC. And less than 10 years later, I mean, here we are, man. And it seems like yesterday. I mean, just watching Rousey and Misha Tate and their trilogy and you know, Misha and Holly and Ronda, and now, you know, it's all wild, man. It's all wild. So we're going to end this thing with looking forward to this weekend, the UFC Fight Night. Your boy, your favorite fighter of all time, Colby Covington versus the former champion Tyron Woodley, doing their thing, getting it on, because these guys, if there are fighters who do not like each other, these two would be up there with Chuck and Tito, man.
Well,
they do not like each other.
Colby, you know,
nobody likes Colby. Except for
Although
President Trump.
Cejudo is like forging some kind of like weird broship with Covington. Yeah, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Cejudo makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's all.
But yeah, I mean, it's a really stacked card, man. I mean, we're going to see the return of Mackenzie Dern and Ronda Marcos, Kevin Holland's on there, Johnny Walker and Ryan Spann, my guy Ryan Spann.
Yeah.
So proud of that guy, man. He's on an 8-fight win streak. The guy, I grew with that guy from an amateur to doing all these things now. And Donald Cerrone, who is in a weird place in his career right now. He can't seem to get a win. Last time we saw him, he was getting shoulder blocked to death by Conor McGregor in the cage, doing the job, as they call it in WWE. He went up there to get the light tan, you know, just laid on his back, man. Just took the tan.
I will be at that fight.
You'll be there.
Yeah, I wasn't going to. I find Covington insufferable. And but it's an important fight. Want to see firsthand kind of how that goes down. Also curious to see what Cerrone has left. Funny enough, last week we had Angela Hill, who people kind of dubbed the female Donald Cerrone because she fights so often. And I don't think Tyron has anything for Colby Covington right now.
You know, Tyron Woodley, 38 years old, man, and there's no shame on that legacy that he's put in there. You know, with that championship, that of course that emphatic win over Robbie Lawler, and you know, all his run that he did and everything. You just, you know, we say it all the time, especially when we're talking about the end for fighters. And I'm not going to say when a fighter should hang it up. Obviously, Donald Cerrone's still in there doing his thing. But you got to wonder how much Tyron Woodley has left to give and offer. I know this is that fight that he wants because of this bad blood between him and Colby, and he wants to go out there, and he still does have that massive right hand that he, you know, and hey, Colby's coming back in with a fresh broken jaw there.
He's going to have to wrestle him. He's going to have to wrestle him to death because that's really, you don't want to be standing up fighting Colby Covington. You saw, I mean, he was going toe-to-toe with Kamaru Usman, and that fight could have gone to Colby Covington. But Tyron has to get that to the ground. Colby Covington is a world-class wrestler. There aren't many fighters in UFC who are on Colby Covington's level when it comes to wrestling. And I really, I think Tyron can take a lot of significant damage in this fight.
And Woodley, who was, you know, did have success in wrestling and college and stuff like that. But we saw in his fight with Burns, his last fight. I mean, he just got manhandled on the feet, on the ground, you know, and it just looks like, I mean, time is not. Usman,
Usman
taking the championship from Woodley,
just
outclassed him, man, on every level. So I have to think if Colby plays it smart, takes it to the ground, there you go, man. And so,
in some strange way, I almost felt like, because that fight got done pretty quickly after a lot of other ones fell out. There were a lot of other opportunities for Kobe Covington. I mean, you think Dana set that fight up so that it could be the last emphatic loss for Tyron Woodley?
You know what, Dana?
Isn't that nefarious?
Dana, unless you no longer draw and you're taking that much damage and everything, Dana will give opportunities to guys. I mean, BJ Penn, Uriah Faber. I mean, these guys, Uriah Faber just fought not too long ago, and so he'll let guys continue to fight that want to fight as long as they draw money and he's not held responsible for their personal physical well-being. But, I think it will give him an opportunity to step into a locker room or step into, an office with them and say, hey, you do a great job on commentary. People like you in that role. You're making yourself an asset in that position. Maybe it's time for you to
stop it.
And I think that would be perfect for Tyron. I mean, he's a great former champion, regardless of how people felt about his fights. I mean, you got to beat the guy. Right. So, I mean, Damian Maia couldn't take him down. And then Usman goes in there and takes him down with ease and beats him up like nothing. So, father time in this sport is very cruel and unforgiving. Most guys do, they go out on their shield or, whatever. And that's how it is.
This is going to be a bad night for the former champ.
I think so, too. I don't like Colby Covington just because. And, but I think it's going to be a long night for him. So anyway, that's the show. That's the show for this week. We're back doing our thing. Right now, you can flip over if you haven't already on Vegas Sports Daily. You can check out Girl Chat Sports with Mo and Mel. They're doing their show, and now they're a part of the Vegas Sports family too. And with us, with us and everyone. So best of luck to them. They got a great show. Go check them out. Like us, follow us. And do all the things. Tweet at us if you have funny videos you want to share or you think we should feature. And I'm going to go eat some more Snickers and look at.
I have to go find me the minis, man.
The IKEA furniture that I hope is put together so I don't have to go out there.
Fun.
We'll see you guys next time.